When I saw the final cut of Lord of the Rings at the cinema, nothing made my heart soar more from the work that we had done than the miniatures. The beauty and the awesome size and nature of the miniatures has given the film a wonderful reality and firmly makes you feel as though you've journeyed to Middle-earth.
It's really quite remarkable, and it's a really testament to both Richard Taylor's work and to Alex Funke's great miniature photography and lighting that bring these sequences to life.
You got to have real film footage. You can't. You can use digital technology to blend things. Some things you have to do digitally. If you have a character like the cave troll, you got to do it digitally, of course, because there's no other way to do it. But beyond that, as much as possible, you want to really photograph an object and really stick it into the shots.
There is something special about using miniatures that Peter loves, and Peter wanted to do as much with large miniatures as he could.
When you're trying to create environments that are not real locations and they're not sets, then there's several ways that you can do it. You could use matte paintings, you could build them in a computer, or you can build models. And I always tend to favour models because to some degree they're interactive, they're user-friendly. I was able to also move cameras around pretty freely in the miniatures. And I wanted obviously lots and lots of shots of these sorts of environments.
The problem with shooting miniatures really is that no matter how big they are, they're never big enough.
The basic rule of thumb is the bigger the miniature, the more realistic it's going to be, because you can put more detail into it. The bigger you build it, the more realistically the light behaves within the set.
The decision to build a miniature to a particular scale is always driven by what can we get into the building.
We built these things huge because we wanted them to stand up to a lot of scrutiny on the screen.
It was like it always had to be this big, and of course the set, I hate heights at the best of times, and I have to go up scissor lifts all the time. I says, can't we do some miniatures? Why do we have to keep doing Bigatures? And that name suddenly, I thought, Bigatures? Yes, they're big, they're not little. I said miniatures, you know. I want something that I can reach the top of without having to put my life on the line here.
I'm standing in amongst the miniature of Rivendell. This is probably the most specifically Alan Lee-esque design on the film. We tried to complement the original drawings of Alan exactly as we went through the process of designing and building this miniature.
Well, this job was a model maker's dream in that we were very, very lucky to be trusted to build from Alan Lee's drawing board or John Howe's drawing board. We were encouraged to work that way because there was nothing between the execution of the model and the pencil marks on the page.
One of the wonderful treats that came as a byproduct out of the building of Rivendell was that while we were building it, Alan Lee was so attached to this miniature that he'd come down regularly and work on it with us.
And he got his paints out and he doodled away and he painted some of the houses. He had great fun. I wish he couldn't get him out of there in the end.
We built it at such a small scale, 24th scale, because originally this miniature was only ever intended for a big wide shot from up the other end of the valley, looking down on the miniature. But what unfolded in the coming months was that Peter envisaged shots where the miniature would be much more involving and utilised in the back of shot to a much greater degree. To that end, the camera got closer and closer, and fortunately, Mary McLaughlin and John Baster had gone to a great deal of trouble early on, even for the wide shot, to get the detail that now is able to stand up and close up in the film.
Chuck Schumann, who was in charge of shooting that sequence, did a brilliant job of working out the details of matching the lighting of the miniature to the live-action lighting, and also because in many cases the moves had to be elaborately massaged to fit, because in many cases there were several different layers of miniature stretching back in depth, and they all had to be shot at in different positions and at different speeds.
We very much wanted Lothlórien to feel like this ethereal, elven home up in the treetops of these huge malorns, that twinkling amongst the branches were these beautiful, almost dewdrop spots of light, and that the whole place felt like it was enriched with music and culture, that this was the highest level of cultural sophistication.
It has a very Art Nouveau feeling. I remember something Peter was stressing that he wanted was that the building should be like opening flowers with dripping tendrils. Alan's drawing is just a vision of this forest with hundreds of houses in it, and that's what we had to build.
This was the most difficult miniature that we built for the whole of Lord of the Rings. We built 8 26-foot tall trees, each one about 5 feet in diameter, carved out of polystyrene with a huge steel structure inside them, then skinned in urethane and carefully detailed to look like bark. Each one had a huge spray of branches, twigs and leaves that created the canopy of the top of the Malorns.
We created a model which was just a canvas for the shooting crew to light, and then it went to the next level and they just bathed it in this beautiful ethereal quality.
This is shot in very heavy smoke because it's a very mysterious, very environmental kind of place, and it's entirely built in the trees. These elven flets, which are these wonderful sort of Art Nouveau buildings suspended from the trees with walkways going in between them, and hundreds and hundreds of light bulbs, hundreds of Christmas tree lights way, way back in the distance where you don't see them as anything but just little tiny points of light. The whole goal here was to create as much depth as possible. We only had 8 trees, but we had to have it look like a whole forest, so basically we had to shoot those 8, change their positions, pull the camera back, shoot them again, change them in positions again, pull the camera back again, and then essentially stack them up so you have, in a sense, 8 times 3, 24 trees instead of 8, by step and repeat. This is the kind of thing that you do to try to tie things together. So once you're looking about 20 feet up, you're into the miniature, and you simply continue on up into the canopy where it disappears into the smoke. And you have the sensation that you're looking hundreds and hundreds of feet into the air.
Now with Orthanc, we wanted to capture the original painting of Alan Lee. In Alan's painting, he illustrated very much the feeling that this was a tower that had been chipped out of black obsidian. The only way we figured out to capture the look of black obsidian was by carving it out of microcrystalline wax. We carved every single element, then assembled it using hot waxes to melt all of the elements together, and then we took a massive silicon mold, a huge matrix mold of this whole structure, and then eventually replicated it in encapsulating resin.
It's designed so that you can come up to it really, really close. Now, we get into what we call hyper-detailing here. We knew, for example, that we were going to have to do a shot of just the staircase with Christopher Lee walking down. Every step was carved with great precision, and every little edge was sharpened so that when we get into that extreme microscopic magnification, it would still stand up.
My old friend.
Swooping in towards Orthanc with Gandalf on top of the tower. That miniature lasts over a minute long on screen, which is another rule in special effects, is keep the shots short so people don't know that they're fake. Our miniatures were so big and so impressive that they stood up to a shot that was a minute long. No problem at all.
It's built at 35th scale to sit in amongst this colossal miniature that we built, about the size of a rugby field.
The ring of Isengard was about 60 feet in diameter, and it's a 35th scale, so if you multiply that out, that's almost a mile in diameter. So we're dealing with a miniature that's representing something that is absolutely enormous. And the ring of Isengard and the tower itself are the miniature. The sky is a matte painting. So that's one of our classic hybrid shots where it reads, you say, wow, look at that. But it's all built up out of pieces. You're putting the right things together to make it work.
24 mine shafts were built into the surface of the miniature. There was over 1,000 pieces of individually modelled architecture that made up the componentry of the mine workings that were laid out throughout this miniature.
They were just urethane pits that we'd carved out of this foam and put all this sort of stuff in there, and then all of a sudden it's come to life. It's moving and it's smoking and it's seething with life, and that was brilliant.
The crowhole shot, which is where the crows come and report to Saruman that they've found the Fellowship. Basically, we needed a hole for the crows to dive into, a first cavern for them to fly through, a second cavern for them to fly through, and another cavern which would be the background for Saruman, a live-action play to Saruman at the end. So essentially, this is one continuous shot on 5 separate pieces. And we had to do the whole thing in a week and a half. But it was a treat because it's a very exciting shot. And Peter just basically said, make it cool, make it look like an ant farm. So that's what we did.
John Howe's illustration strongly inspired the Argonaths, and he played a great part in the art direction of these characters. It's funny when you're standing amongst the miniature, because you're not at the eye height of the hobbits and the boats, it looks very miniature-like. But when it's lit beautifully by Alex Funke and his team on the miniatures stage, and the correct environment and digital surroundings, Tol Brandir sitting in amongst the falls, and the sky and landscape is placed in, a miniature like this can very much come to life.
I love the Argonaths. Now, they were at 1/60th scale. They stand about 8 feet tall, and they were sculpted out of urethane foam, which is a rigid foam. Yeah, instant aging. You realise this is a top secret process developed over 1 million years by cavemen and model makers alike. I'm not going to knock that front piece off because I need to think about that. I've got to knock a piece off the nose, and I hate doing that because I know that if I knock a piece off the nose, the wrong bit will fall off. I'm actually going to give the stone to Alan Lee and make him knock the piece off the nose. The trick with a scale model is not to overdo it. You've got to be subtle. You can't go whacking into things and getting too carried away.
The concept behind them is that they're carved out of the cliff faces of the river, but we theorised that probably there wasn't the necessary rock to be able to carve the whole figure. So in what we're saying is that they were able to carve to about this level, but then had to construct this massive quarry to mine the rock, lifting with massive gantries and lifting equipment up onto the upper surfaces of these huge 300-foot tall sculptures to place in place these huge granite blocks into which they could continue to carve and create the final look of the characters.
How they did it, I don't know. That would have been some fantastic scaffolding, and it would have been a great project to do a retro model to show the construction of the Argonath, because I think it would eclipse the pyramids, frankly. But anyway, we had to think it through and make it look like that's what they did. Again, we had Alan Lee drawings. They were fantastic drawings. There were lots of sketches of lots of different angles showing different areas of it. It was like a city that had fallen down into the volcanic pit.
This miniature particularly was a very complex and very large miniature to build.
And it came apart in about 8 or 9 pieces so that we could get them out of the door and down the road to the shooting stage.
At any one time, the camera had to be able to be filming within 2 inches of the surface. So therefore, the whole miniature had to be done at macro detail.
It's the Khazad-dûm staircase scene where the Fellowship, run down and have to jump over the hole in the stairs. I mean, they are entirely miniature environments that are used shot after shot after shot. It's like almost a 3-minute section of the film is filmed continuously inside this model. And there's virtually no set was built for that. There's a tiny little piece of set for a couple of close-ups of actors at the beginning, and everything else was just shot against blue screens using the miniature as the background.
So here we are in the Great Hall of Moria, one of the great strongholds of the dwarves. It lies between the stairs of Khazad-dûm and the bridge of Khazad-dûm. This is a very beautiful set. It's built mostly out of hard sculpted resin, finished to look like polished marble. And the floor is all built out of foam, and the ceiling's built out of foam. One of the things that's most remarkable about this set is the degree of detail that's been drawn into it. It's one of the things that makes it so convincing. As close as you go, you see more and more information. You see more and more detail. And that's what makes a good miniature work, is the fact that the detail doesn't break down even when you're really close to it. So the Fellowship has to pass through it after they leave the stairs on their way to the bridge in safety. So they have to run all the way down the hall in order to get out over the bridge. We did a really cool shot. It's basically kind of a helicopter shot where we fly down through the Great Hall and up over the bridge, arcing around, so we end up on the other side of the bridge looking back. The Fellowship runs across the bridge of Khazad-dûm, and then Gandalf takes his stand in the middle and holds the Balrog at bay. Peter had a very specific sequence of events that he wanted to have happen in the way that the bridge broke, that Gandalf essentially cracked it and damaged it just enough so that the Balrog would step on it and it would cave in. So it makes possible shooting a sequence that you literally could never do in live action.
If we've done our job really well, people won't know that they're looking at miniatures. And if you think it's real, then that's a successful model.
Peter doesn't want an effect shot to jump out and say, look at me, I'm an effect shot. Hey, did you like that? He wants the effect shots to disappear. I mean, in a sense, our greatest triumph would be if people said, effects? What effects? We try to add the storytelling elements that don't exist in the real world, and then we should just erase our tracks.